Hi everyone, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com and today I'm interviewing Alexis Grant. Alexis is an entrepreneur, a social media strategist, a freelance journalist and a travel writer who helps other people build an effective online presence. She's just released a course on using social media to make your own luck. So welcome Alexis.
Thanks for having me. Having me back.
Yeah, and it's great to have you back on the show. It's been like over 2 years, so we'll come to that in a bit. How things have moved on. But why don't we start with what you're working on right now, which is how do you make your own luck? How do you do it on social media? What is this all about?
Sure. This is something that people have been asking me about for a while because I often write on my blog about how to make your own luck. And what I mean by that is how to put your networks in place, make strategic connections so that opportunities come to you, right? Because a lot of times, think about when something good happens, a lot of people will say, oh, you're so lucky. Like, you sold all those copies of your book, right? You're so lucky. And really, maybe a little bit of luck plays into that, but a lot of that is hard work. And you put those pieces in place along the way so that when you're ready to sell all those copies, it happened for you. Mm-hmm. And so this course, it's an email-based course, and basically I send you a tip a day for a month, something you should do to grow your networks so that luck will come to you. And it's pretty Twitter heavy because, and I know you love Twitter also, I believe Twitter is the best network for meeting people that don't already know you, but there are also some Facebook and LinkedIn tips there as well.
Right, so are we basically talking about relationship marketing?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I don't think of it as marketing, but I guess some people do call it that. So I think more of building relationships online.
So people, I guess because my audience are authors and writers, who what would be their definition of sort of making their own luck, and how specifically might they go about doing it?
Yeah, I'm hoping that this, and it looks so far like from the people who have signed up, that this will be really a writer-heavy class. And it would work for anyone. It would work for someone who's trying to get a new job or start their own business. But since my background is in writing, and I work with a lot of writers online, and I know how some different writers struggle with this, I particularly like helping writers. So for a writer, this could mean reaching or connecting with the right editor who might publish your work. It could mean networking with a big author who will publish who will blurb your book when it comes out, like write a recommendation. It could mean sign with a literary agent because my story of how I signed with a literary agent involved Twitter. And so there's a lot of different things that it can involve. And one example I like to give is this isn't directly related to writing, but it does help my writing. About a month ago, Problogger named me as one of the bloggers to watch in 2012. And everyone asked me, how did you get on that list? And really, it was another case of making my own luck where I happened to have networked with the person who was writing that story. And so she knew about what I was up to. And like I said, that's not directly related to writing, but it really helps. It helps my blog. It does help my writing because it's helping me build a platform.
Yeah, and I was on that list too a few years ago, and I know that being on lists like that does make a real difference, doesn't it?
It helps because it sends a lot of people to your blog who otherwise wouldn't have seen you. So you're getting new eyes, and I found a lot of those people subscribed to my blog, whereas sometimes when people just come randomly to a blog, they might look around, but they might not subscribe necessarily the first time. But if you're recommended on a list like that, it does boost your subscribers, I think.
And why don't you tell us a bit more about your own book and how you got your agent on Twitter? Because I know people are like, what was that?
Yeah, sure. So I was writing a book in '09 and ended up looking for a literary agent in the beginning of 2010. And I had gotten on Twitter in the beginning of 2009, so I was looking for an agent about a year into my life on Twitter. And I had started to build kind of a good network. And I ended up, one of the writers that I became friends with on Twitter, I didn't know it at the time because we had just connected because we had a lot in common. Like we were both journalists and we were both writing memoirs. And she, just like you connect with anyone on Twitter, you think that they're an interesting person, so you start talking to them. We kind of became friends. We even talked on the phone a few times. And when she heard I was looking for an agent, it turned out that she was friends with Rachelle Gardner, who is a literary agent who has a blog, but I hadn't queried her. I hadn't thought of her. And then this new friend of mine, happened to know that Rachelle was looking for a book about, she wanted to represent a book about Africa. And so this friend suggested my book to her, and we got in touch, and I sent her my manuscript, and then we signed. So it wasn't, this is actually a really great example of making your own luck, because it was kind of a one step removed. So I wasn't directly connecting with the literary agent on Twitter, but I connected with someone else who connected me to her.
And I think that's a really good point, because people shouldn't just target like big names, should they? Because there is a sort of hierarchy. So what's your recommendation for people who are like, well, maybe they've just got on Twitter or LinkedIn or something? How do they start this networking process?
I would say network with anyone who's interesting to you. And I do think it's important to network with people who are thought leaders and influential in your field and have lots of followers. But in many cases, it can be just as beneficial to network with people who have smaller and maybe more targeted networks, because those people also have their own connections, and some of those people are going to want to help you just like somebody big might.
And just on that, I mean, you and I met on Twitter about when we both joined back in like March 2009 or something.
Yeah.
And neither of us had much, going on at the time, I suppose. And both of our blogs have grown a lot. So you also never know where people are going to end up, do you?
No, that's totally true. And I mean, I think that's really interesting, like how my career has grown or has progressed, because I have my background as traditional journalism, so I know a lot of journalists. And I started out working, covering City Hall in Houston, and kind of got a circle of friends in journalism, and now a lot of those people are big shots doing really interesting things. So it's so funny, like the friendships that you cultivate early on can turn out to be more beneficial than you plan.
Yeah, exactly. And how long will things take? So if people are wondering, like for us, maybe it's been a couple of years to really see an impact. How long are things going to take?
I think things take a while. It's just like if you're trying to blog, right, and you're trying to build an audience for your blog, you have to really be consistent. And that's one of the things I talk a lot about in my course is consistency. The reason why I send an email a day for a month is because I want you to get in that habit of strategically connecting every single day, even if it's only a little bit. And just thinking about how can you push your networks to the next level. So for example, like I have this plugin on my Gmail called, is it Rapportive or Rapportive? I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's this great plugin because it comes up next to your Gmail, and whenever someone writes you an email, all their networks pop up. So if someone new writes me an email, I have like literally in that same box, if they're on Twitter, it's their Twitter handle, probably their LinkedIn handle, maybe Facebook, and wherever else, all the other places where they might be, including like a blog. And so it's helpful because not like connecting with someone over email is great, but if you want to keep that connection going and start to grow that relationship, it's good to connect on other channels too. So they're going to see you once in a while. They're going to remember what you're up to. You're kind of showing up in their feed without them having to come to you. So that's one example of just consistently building your network, because I do think it does take a while, and you got to get in the habit of not feeling like it's a chore, feeling like it's maybe a little bit fun, right? And that if you do it daily, it's gonna help you in the long run.
Yeah, and I think for authors, sometimes they feel that all of this stuff online isn't connecting them with readers, but I personally find that connecting with other bloggers, other writers is useful. What do you think about that? Should people try to connect with readers or other people in the industry?
Both. I think a lot of us are connecting with other bloggers and other people who are in our same boat. But those people know readers, right? So when your book comes out, those people, if they share the link to your book, it's going to go out to all of their network. So I do think it's important to connect with whoever you connect with, like on a personal level, right? Don't overlook those relationships with other writers, but also try to get outside of that box and connect with readers if you can. It's a little bit more difficult, I think, for a lot of writers, because we want to talk about writing. We don't necessarily want to talk about our characters, and so I do think that's a little bit more challenging. But I think if you can do both, then you'll have like a balanced approach.
And I'm a total believer in all that you talk about. But you've also come a long way yourself in the last 2 years. I wondered if you could talk a bit about, how you've transitioned, I guess, from employee to entrepreneur, and how you're using your writing in your new business life.
Sure. So I worked as a full-time journalist for 6 years, and I left my day job in August of 2011, so about 5 months ago now. And now I'm running my own business. So I'm creating online products, kind of like you are. So I create informational ebooks. It's nonfiction, and courses, and I'm selling those to anybody who comes to the site. But then I have clients. So I help small businesses and startups use social media to build their communities online. And in most cases, I actually build the community for them. So I'll be running their Facebook campaign or helping them with their blog. I do a lot of blogging with startups. And so one of my ebooks is on that topic. It's called How to Build a Part-Time Social Media Business. So I built this business on the side of my day job when I was working at U.S. News and World Report, covering careers as a reporter. And so then just ended up transitioning into that full time.
And how have you used your writing specifically in, becoming a small business person?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think a lot of people think that the only way to make a living as a writer, or they really want to make a living maybe as a fiction writer. I'm a firm believer that if you want to make money writing, you have to really use it in other ways. So you have to have an expertise. You have to have something you can offer people that either they're going to buy or they're going to want to pay for. And so I basically write all day. I'm always creating content, but it might not be in the same way of what you think of as writing. I write a lot of tweets because I create Twitter updates for my clients. And so people don't think of that as writing, but really it is. You have to have a strong writing skills to create good tweets that people are actually going to read, that make sense, that are very succinct and don't waste characters, right? I blog a lot, so I'm always creating blog content for my own blog and then for other blogs that I help with. I have a couple of newsletters now, including a weekly newsletter called Solopreneur Secrets, where I'm basically explaining kind of how I'm transitioning to working for myself. And so I put a lot of time into writing that newsletter. And I was going to give you another example. I also do take time for creative writing. So, for example, I had a story that ran on salon.com yesterday, which is my first byline on that site. And even more importantly, it was my first personal essay that was ever published. So I was kind of excited about it,
Cool.
Which is funny because, when you're a journalist, you get bylines quite often, but when it's something really outside of your comfort zone and a little bit different, that's when, you really feel good about it. So I am taking time also to do some creative writing.
Well, it's fantastic that you're sort of doing the more personal writing. But when we met, a few years ago, you had just come back from your solo sort of Africa trip, and you were writing this travel memoir. So give us an update on that book. You got the agent. What's happened?
Yep, not that much. I mean, the publishing industry moves really slow. So the book is with my agent. We went through some edits and figured out how we were going to pitch it, and now she's in the process of figuring out how to sell it. So now it's kind of in her boat, and I don't have to worry about it too much. But yeah, it's crazy because I have all these ebooks now, which feel like they move at a crazy pace compared to the publishing industry. And I'm sure you're aware of that since you've publish your own stuff. But it's just crazy how slow the traditional publishing industry can move.
And so how does that make you feel in terms of, do you still want a traditional deal, or are you interested are you going to self-publish it, or what, how do you feel about that?
Well, for now, I definitely need to give it a shot because my agent's put time and effort into it, so I want to give her a shot at selling it. But I don't feel super good about it, to be honest. I find it really frustrating that it's out of my hands and in someone else's hands. And one of the things that I love about my business now is like I can create something that I want to create without having to wait for anybody else to say, okay. I don't need someone else's approval. I don't need someone else to push the publish button. When I want to write something, if I see a market for it, I can write it. And you have to figure out how to make money doing that. But as long as you have that in the back of your head, you can create the content you want to create. And that's a big reason why I'm doing this. So it's hard for me to wait for someone else to say, okay, this is worthy of putting out in the world. And I guess it's even a little bit more difficult because it's a travel memoir about Africa. And I'm worried that I think a lot of publishers have the notion that people don't want to read about Africa. And so I'm interested to see, whether this sells. So keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah. And I guess, if it doesn't, you now know all of this stuff and you can actually do it yourself.
I could, but I don't know if I would, because I see memoir as a different genre than informational ebooks, which is what I've been selling. And I know that you've sold fiction successfully, but I think it's a lot more difficult to sell fictions successfully as self-published than nonfiction. And nonfiction it's also more lucrative because it can go for a higher price. So like my ebook on how to become a social media consultant sells for $24 each. So every time someone sells that, it's money in my pocket, especially because you don't have to pay a lot to create it besides your time. So I just think it's a lot more difficult to get people to market a memoir that's self-published. And I don't know if I have a big enough I think you have a bigger audience than I do, so you're able to sell fiction maybe a little bit easier than I would be able to. So I would maybe think, the reason why I think about doing it is because I feel like I have an obligation to my readers because they've been supporting me and they know that I've been working on this book, and that's kind of, writing a book was the premise of my blog from the beginning, even though that's kind of morphed now. So a lot of people that are still with me, who still read me regularly, they know that what I've gone through trying to get this book published, or mostly trying to get it written and now trying to get it published. But I don't really feel like I wrote it for myself, and it was an exercise in writing, and it was maybe a better writer, it was something I wanted to do, but I don't really feel like I have to see it in print to feel like I did a good job or to feel like I completed the project. So I think I'll cross that bridge when I come to it.
Well, I'm one of those people. I want to read the book, and it's like you are a completely different person now than you were when you wrote the book.
That's true. That's so true. I mean, it feels like forever ago. And I also think in my head, okay, this is the thing with traditional publishing. Could I now write the book better than I did 2 years ago? Probably. I'm a better reader, right? So it just like by the time the book comes out, it's like, good Lord, that was forever ago that I actually went backpacking in Africa.
But you are going on another trip, aren't you? You've got a trip planned. Are you going to write something from that? And how does that kind of lifestyle fit into your business?
Yeah, I'm going to Nicaragua and Costa Rica in a week. So I'm going for the month of February. And yeah, I'm excited. I think I'll write blog posts. And I might do a couple of stories for like magazines, or maybe write a couple of profiles of people who live in different places. But I'm not planning like some big book out of it. This is just for fun for me. So the idea is, especially with this first trip, because this is the first time that I've taken a trip in a while, right? Because for a while I had a day job where I only had 2 weeks of vacation. And then I was building up my business, and it's hard to leave your desk when you're trying to build a business. So this is kind of my test of whether I can continue to grow the business while I'm away. And I've done a ton of prep work for it because I really want it to be a vacation for me too. So it's a working vacation, but I'm going to be trying not to work too much. So I have several folks who help me with my business. I call them apprentices. So I've like really given them a lot of work over this last month so that I can be doing less work while I'm traveling.
And I mean, I guess the question is, so how happy are you about this new way of living, the kind of entrepreneur, this slasher lifestyle, as you call it?
I love it. And one of my friends asked me yesterday, he's like, what day job would it take for you to leave this lifestyle behind. And he was throwing out these ideas, these ridiculous jobs. He said, what if you made 150,000 working for, a super politician or something like that? And, the truth is, I said to him, maybe down the road, I could see myself maybe at some point working a day job for the stability and because you can leave it behind when you leave work. But right now, which is the main problem for me right now, but I love this. Like, I love it because, like I said, I can create the content that I want to create, which is super important to me. And that's what I want to be doing. I want to be learning and growing and working on a different project when it hits me, not waiting until, I leave my day job to do it. And then also the flexibility. So, I feel really stifled when I can't take time away to travel. And so this lets me make that happen, even though it's not easy, but I can make it happen.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm with you as well. I was just about a month after you, I quit my day job as well. And so we're it's funny how our paths are quite similar in that way. So I'm really excited about what you're going to do over the next 2 years, and me too. So we're going to obviously have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, we can see what's changed in the next 2 years.
Yeah. So where can people find you and your books and your products?
I'm at alexisgrant.com. And I'm also on Twitter at Alexis Grant.
Fantastic. Well, thanks ever so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.